Grounded was a fantastic game, but Grounded 2, that's already shaping up to be something special. It strips out the frustrations of the original, adds some genuinely clever mechanics, and somehow makes a joyful game even, well, more enjoyable. Now, I'm going to heap a fair bit of praise on Obsidian for what they've pulled off here, even in this early access build. And yes, the early access badge does get on my tits for this particular game, which I will get into. But here's the real uncomfortable truth. As good as this is, I still don't think you should pay for it. Not yet, anyway. So, put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's dive back into the brilliant world of Grounded. It's rare you find a game that lets you piss about in a world so eager for chaos, where havoc, destruction and death are all on the menu, and yet you barely need to touch the story if you don't want to. So Grounded 2, much like its predecessor then, is one of those games where you're always progressing, even when the main plot is sat there gathering dust. You'll be off exploring, stumbling across oddities like this freezer, that massive statue, or just taking in the views around you. You'll lose hours building, crafting, watching bugs scrap it out in the undergrowth, or absolutely shitting bricks as you wander into anthills and spider dens, and all the while you're mucking about with your mates, having a proper laugh while hours have passed. Grounded 2 then is all that and more, and I can say without hesitation, this one is already better than the original in every single way. Now, I could wax lyrical about some of the smaller improvements, like the story, which, to be fair, I would say still bored the living hell out of me, but it's better than what it was. However, it does get going so much sooner, and I for one am all for that. There's more depth to the world too. Every twist and turn leads to something new, as if stumbling past Big Ben and then finding the Eiffel Tower right around the corner. Each discovery feels like a little wonder in its own right. But there are two things here that are absolute game changers. The first, and the one that most other reviews have already latched onto, is the mounts, and yeah, they genuinely shift the way you play Grounded. Exploration becomes faster, smoother, more fluid. They all handle brilliantly, and yes, that's what she said. But with that added ease does come a bit of a trade-off. See, back in the original, wandering too close to a spider nest was a shit your pants experience moment. In fact, it very much felt like more of a horror game at times. But now, riding in on your trusty little ant, and I got Billy Big Bollocks, didn't I? I was charging past scorpions like I was bulletproof. So whilst mounts boost efficiency, they do undercut some of that horror and some of that tension. I'm hoping then that as they expand the world, they find ways to bring a bit of that danger back in, especially when you're mounted up. But the biggest win for me, and one that's not really talked about enough, is this new Omni Tool. This thing's a little revelation, a jack of all trades that lets you chop, dig, smash or repair without constantly juggling 5 different tools. No more wasted inventory slots, no more crafting tools to make tools, no more endlessly repairing the same old shit that you'd rather ignore. From the off, it lets you crack on with what matters, gathering, exploring, building, and better yet, you can upgrade it as well, which means from the moment you get your hands on it, there's incentive to power it up, to open up new areas, or just make gathering that much easier. It might sound like a small piece of the puzzle, but for me, it was a difference between immediate grind and immediate enjoyment. And if you're a fan of not having to lug around 5 tools just to cut a blade of grass, give this video a little like and maybe a cheeky little sub while you're at it, as you know, it does help the YouTube overlords. Now, when it comes to actual gameplay, it's mostly familiar territory. You pick one of 4 kids, they get zapped down to the size of a tic tac, and surprise surprise, wind up in the overgrown wilderness of a city park. Your goal, try to get them big again, whilst uncovering a story involving a greedy corporation being, well, greedy twats. Along the way, you fend off every kind of creepy crawly imaginable, most of which are the same from the first outing. As you explore the map and dip in and out of different biomes, the enemies get tougher, and the only way to keep up is to grind your way through the local wildlife to build better gear, smash up a few ants, get the bits to craft ant armour, then go smash up the soldier ants, rinse and repeat. Now, I know I've made that sound like a bit of a bore fest, but it's not. it's surprisingly addictive. Building up your character, gathering resources, improving your kit, it's that satisfying survival loop that simply just works. What I am still a bit disappointed in though is the base building. Obviously we're early in development, so this might evolve, but so far I haven't felt much reason to build anything meaningful. I've been perfectly happy plonking down little shanty tents wherever I land and cracking on from there. That said, it was much the same in the original Grounded. It wasn't until mid to late game that I started taking base building seriously, slapping up some proper defences so I could sleep through the night without waking up to a spider chewing my face off. So maybe it's not a criticism, but rather just an observation. There's a bunch of other things that you'll come across too, some brilliant, some maddening, that'll either brighten your day or leave you seething. Bugs getting stuck in the ground and smacking you from below, that one is a right joy. Some quest icons on the HUD are also vague as hell, like this one here that had me running around in circles wondering where the bloody hell I was meant to go. Combat wise, plenty of enemies can be cheesed by simply standing above them and swinging away, but credit where it's due, the AI is surprisingly solid. Enemies will back off, block and even bait you if you're not paying attention, and when you're on foot it still manages to be properly terrifying. Spotting blades of grass for example as they shift about, but not knowing if it's a ladybug or a giant scorpion coming to end your life is still an absolute thrill. What really impresses me though is how alive this world feels. Bugs will interact with each other in a proper ecosystem fashion. At one point me and a gang of ants gave a proper ladybug such a battering I was half expecting animal services to knock on my door. There's loads more I could dive into, but this is where Grounded 2 really shines. It's where game systems and game design come together in harmony, and it's that what makes this whole thing so bloody enjoyable. So far then, yeah, it's bigger, it's better, and it's more fun to play than the original, but even with all that, I still can't say it's worth the price of entry unless you're on Game Pass. Because here's the thing, as stunning as it looks, and we'll get to that shortly, I can't ignore the performance issues. I'm running a 5090, max settings, full 4K, and still this game gobbled up my frame rate like it was starring in a Sasha Grey retrospective. I was seeing drops into the high 40s in some areas, only when I dialed things back to high did it start behaving, finally pushing to a smooth 60. Maybe it's better on AMD cards with FSR, but there's no DLSS as yet for us Nvidia users. Now if that's what's happening on a top spec rig, I dread to think what mid-range players are dealing with right now. For anyone not already a fan, that kind of stuttery first impression could spoil the magic, which begs the question, would it be better to wait, let the performance get patched, let the content get bulked out, and then dive in when it's really ready? For my money, yes, that's exactly what you should do. But that also brings me to the other point, and that is the label of early access. This part isn't just aimed at Obsidian, but the industry at large. I'll be honest lads, I'm getting pissed off with how early access is being used by massive studios flush with cash. It used to be a lifeline for indie devs, a way to build a following, raise a bit of funding, develop with community feedback. I just reviewed SWAT Commander, a little team of 5 doing their best to break the mould. But now though, it feels like the big boys have nicked the label, watered it down, and started flogging half-finished games with a shrug of the shoulder and saying, well, it's early access, innit lads? As if that excuses poor optimization, cut content, or bugs that should have been squashed months ago. But Grounded 2, it doesn't need early access. The roadmap is clear as day. The polish is already there in its systems and skill trees. They've got an entire first game's worth of learning behind them. This isn't some scrappy dev trying to figure things out. This is a studio that could have waited a year and released an entirely finished product, but instead we get this safety net, a buffer zone for criticism, a shield for performance issues, all whilst the money men rake it in. Call me cynical boys and girls, but I reckon early access is being abused, and it's players like us ultimately that are footing the bill. But with that moan out the way, let's talk graphics, because I can't ignore how brilliant this looks. Much like the original, Grounded 2 is proper Margot Robbie-esque. It is gorgeous. Maybe it's a bit of a placebo effect, but it feels more vibrant, like every zone's had a layer of polish added. It's not just that the environments are bigger, for example this opening section being the size of the entire first game, it's that they all feel more alive, and that sense of scale, it is still absolutely spot on. From the top of a dirt mound you can gaze out across this miniature world or giant world depending in how you look at it. There's a massive statue looming over the garden. Other zones are softly blurred into the distance thanks to that brilliant use of depth of field, an overused graphical effect in a lot of other games, but not here. That's because in Grounded 2 it feels justified rather than just slapped on for cinematic flair. The animations are bang on too, mounts feel fluid and satisfying to control, and the bugs, when they come charging at you, they have this terrifying twitchy aggression to them that really sells the threat. I never get comfortable, for example, when an orb spider is right up my arse. Textures are detailed, assets are high res, and when you crank it to ultra, you are treated to some proper post-processing magic. Sunshafts bursting through blades of grass, puddles of water giving that murky, reflective look as bees fly overhead. It's proper eye candy stuff, in particular going through an anthill all dark, seeing as the mud walls enclose around you and the very little light that does exist bounces around inside. Put it this way lads, it's one of the most nerve jangling and atmospheric shit your pants moments that you can find in modern gaming, especially when you start to see purple eyes and it's a scorpion that is charging at you. And that's exactly why again I'm so baffled by this so-called early access. Visually there's very little here that says unfinished, it's polished, it's rich, and apart from the performance hiccups I can't really fault it. Then there's the sound, and well, this one is a little bit trickier. See, the first game already had a strong foundation. The music kicks in when you're under attack, sound effects hit just right, whether it's the thud of a hammer or the satisfying chop of an axe, and there's always that subtle rustle of grass around you, giving away that something big is creeping nearby. That's what she said once again. Voice acting, decent. It's a bit cheesy here and there, but charming enough to get the job done. So all good, but here's the flip side. Nothing in Grounded 2's soundscape feels new. If you played me 1 minute of Grounded followed by a minute of Grounded 2 with my eyes closed, I honestly don't think I could tell the difference, and that's where the disappointment creeps in. Don't get me wrong, it's just as polished and punchy as before, but that's the word. As before. It feels like a missed opportunity to not elevate the sequel here. I'd have loved to have seen a bit more dynamic musical score, something more memorable that breathes life into those big moments. So yeah, solid work, just not much evolution, and in a sequel that improves nearly everything else, it's the one area that does feel a bit stuck in the past. Overall then, Grounded 2 is shaping up to be one of the best survival games of our generation, and when it finally hits that 1.0 release, I wouldn't be surprised to see it in the Game of the Year conversations. It's a fantastic sequel in almost every way. The combat is tighter, mounts change the flow of exploration, and gathering feels smoother without all the usual faff of tool building. It's backed by solid sound design and a world that's flat out beautiful, but with all the major content still to come and the performance that is frankly all over the shop, I can't sit here and tell you, hand on my heart, go buy this now lads and lasses, because that would be disingenuous of me. What I can say is this: Grounded 2 is going to be epic. Just hold on to your horses. If you've got Game Pass, absolutely give it a spin, but for everyone else, just have a bit of patience for now, because it will mean a much better experience later, because this one is special and it is only gonna get better. Until next time my lovelies, love to you all, Reggie out.